A Day in the Life of a Fantasy Fan, Part 3. Monday morning arrived, pulling Clara back to the rhythm of everyday life. The alarm buzzed insistently, and she reluctantly left the warmth of her blankets. But even as she prepared for work, she infused her day with touches of her fantasy passion. Her wardrobe reflected her love for the genre. A dragon scale-inspired scarf, subtle earrings shaped like crescent moons, and a leather bag embossed with an intricate tree of life design. She grabbed her travel mug, inscribed with the phrase, "Not all those who wander are lost," and stepped out the door, ready to face the mundane world with a bit of magic in her heart. On her commute, Clara escaped into the audiobook version of The Winds of Eldenmore. The narrator's deep, velvety voice brought the tale to life, making the crowded bus feel like the deck of a pirate ship braving stormy seas. When she arrived at work, she paused the story reluctantly, already eager for her lunch break to continue the adventure. Clara's job at a publishing company wasn't glamorous, but she loved being surrounded by books, even if most were business guides and cookbooks. Her desk was a small oasis of fantasy, a tiny figurine of a griffin perched beside her monitor, a framed map of a fictional realm pinned to the wall, and sticky notes shaped like shields. During her lunch break, she scribbled in her notebook, outlining the next chapter of her novel. The protagonist, Captain Illyria, was about to face her toughest challenge yet, convincing a rogue mage to join her crew. Clara's co-workers often teased her about her scribbling, but she didn't mind. She knew they'd never understand the joy of creating a world from scratch. The afternoon passed quickly, and when the clock struck 5, Clara hurried home. Monday nights were reserved for her favorite fantasy book club. A small group of like-minded enthusiasts gathered online to discuss their latest read, The Forgotten Isles. The conversation was lively, full of debates about the characters' motivations and speculation about the author's next book. After the meeting, Clara settled into her nook once again, her mind buzzing with inspiration. She opened her laptop and began typing furiously, the glow of her screen illuminating her determined face. Words poured out, and for hours she was lost in the flow, crafting scenes of sky battles and ancient curses. When she finally looked up, the clock read well past midnight. She stretched, exhausted but exhilarated. It had been a long day, but a fulfilling one. As she climbed into bed, Clara reflected on how her love of fantasy wasn't confined to weekends or special occasions. It was woven into the fabric of her daily life, a constant source of joy and creativity. And as she drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of new adventures waiting to unfold, both in her stories and in the worlds she loved so much. A Day in the Life of a Fantasy Fan, Part 4. Tuesday dawned with an air of quiet anticipation. For Clara, it wasn't just another weekday, it was release day for the latest expansion of her favorite online game, Realm of Etheria. She had preloaded the update the night before, and as she sipped her morning coffee, she eagerly scrolled through patch notes and new content teasers. Work felt longer than usual, the hours stretching endlessly as Clara daydreamed about exploring the new zones and unlocking the rumored legendary quests. Even her co-workers noticed her distracted state, teasing her about being mentally in another realm. When the workday finally ended, Clara all but raced home. She barely paused to change into her comfiest sweatshirt, emblazoned with her guild's logo, before logging into the game. The new expansion, The Shattered Realms, opened with a cinematic so breathtaking that Clara actually gasped. The next few hours were a blur of discovery. The new areas were breathtaking, shimmering crystal caverns, floating islands linked by magical bridges, and ancient ruins teeming with hidden lore. Clara's ranger, Arwen Nightshade, quickly leveled up by completing new challenges and battling fierce new monsters. As her guildmates came online, the excitement grew. Together, they embarked on a massive raid, facing down a colossal golem made of living stone. The teamwork was intense, with each member playing a crucial role, and the thrill of victory was palpable when the golem finally crumbled. After logging off, Clara felt exhilarated yet pleasantly drained. She decided to wind down by sketching some of the stunning environments, she had seen in the game. Art supplies scattered across her table. She lost herself in recreating the ethereal beauty of the floating islands, complete with tiny details like glowing runes and cascading waterfalls. Before bed, Clara indulged in her favorite nighttime ritual, reading a chapter of her current fantasy novel. Tonight's story transported her to a city built on the back of a giant sea creature, its citizens living in harmony with the ever-moving tides. As the protagonist unraveled a centuries-old mystery, Clara felt her imagination soar. Closing the book with a satisfied sigh, she reflected on how much joy fantasy brought to her life. Whether through games, books, art, or her own creations, these worlds fueled her creativity and provided an endless well of inspiration. With dreams of floating islands and daring adventures, Clara drifted off to sleep, ready to see what new wonders the next day would bring. A Day in the Life of a Fantasy Fan, Part 5. Wednesday started with a spark of excitement. Clara had been invited to a small local event, a fantasy-themed trivia night at the Wandering Bard Cafe. She looked forward to showing off her knowledge and connecting with fellow fans. But first, there was the day ahead. Work was steady but uneventful, leaving Clara plenty of time to mentally prepare for the trivia. During her lunch break, she even scribbled down some quick notes in her journal. The major houses of Game of Swords, magical creatures from the Chronicles of Eldoria, and spells from her favorite wizarding series. When evening rolled around, Clara arrived at the cafe to find it transformed. Flickering lead candles adorned the tables, and the staff wore cloaks and tunics, fully embracing the fantasy vibe. Clara was seated with a mix of old and new faces, forming a team with fellow enthusiasts. The trivia kicked off with easy questions. What is the name of Gandalf's sword? What creature guards Gringotts vaults? Before progressing to more obscure ones. Clara's team cheered as she nailed a particularly tough question about the lost languages of the Seven Kingdoms. The highlight of the night came during the final round, a creative challenge where each team had to come up with a short fantasy story using random prompts. Clara's team received a cursed necklace, a talking fox, and a forgotten forest. With her experience writing her own stories, Clara took the lead, weaving a tale about a brave adventurer and their cunning fox companion who outsmart a malevolent sorcerer. Their storytelling earned them loud applause, and the first-place prize, a hand-carved dragon figurine. Thrilled with the win, Clara lingered after the event to chat with the other fans. The conversations flowed effortlessly, ranging from favorite characters to theories about upcoming releases. She even exchanged contact info with a fellow writer, who invited her to join a local fantasy writers' circle. When Clara returned home, her energy was still buzzing. She placed the dragon figurine on her bookshelf, where it gleamed proudly among her collection of treasures. Inspired by the night's events, she pulled out her laptop and spent an hour editing a key scene in her novel, the introduction of her protagonist's mischievous familiar, a fox with secrets of its own. As the clock ticked past midnight, Clara finally closed her laptop and crawled into bed. Her thoughts were filled with gratitude for the community she had found and the shared passion that connected them all. For Clara, it wasn't just the fantastical worlds that made her life special. It was the people who loved them too. And as she drifted off to sleep, she couldn't help but smile, knowing that her journey as a fantasy fan would always be filled with magic, adventure, and camaraderie. Part 6. Thursday dawned quieter than the eventful night before, but Clara was still riding the high of her trivia victory. She snapped a quick photo of her new dragon figurine on her bookshelf and posted it to her favorite fantasy fan group online. Within minutes, the comments poured in, ranging from admiration of the figurine to questions about the event itself. After work, Clara decided to tackle a project she'd been putting off, creating a custom playlist for her writing sessions. She scoured the internet for atmospheric fantasy soundtracks, haunting flutes, epic orchestras, and ethereal vocals. The result was a playlist titled Legends and Lore, perfect for immersing herself in her story's world. As the evening wore on, she delved back into her novel. Tonight, she focused on a pivotal scene where her protagonist, Captain Illyria, would face a council of skeptical elders to plead for their help in battling an ancient curse. Clara found herself lost in the dialogue, trying to balance Illyria's defiant spirit with the vulnerability of needing aid. When she hit a creative block, Clara stepped away from the screen and turned to her art supplies. Sketching had always helped her untangle her thoughts. She drew the council chamber from her story, a circular room with tall, arched windows and a glowing crystal centerpiece. As she shaded the intricate patterns of the elders' robes, new ideas began to take shape. Later, Clara shared her sketch on social media, accompanied by a brief snippet from the scene. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with her friends and followers cheering her on. One comment even suggested a plot twist she hadn't considered, sparking her creativity anew. Before bed, Clara treated herself to a bit of escapism by diving into her latest game, Realm of Etheria. She explored a newly discovered dungeon, solving puzzles and collecting rare loot. The final battle in the dungeon was particularly intense, requiring her to use every trick she'd learned. When she emerged victorious, she couldn't help but laugh at her own triumphant fist pump. As she turned off the game and got ready for bed, Clara reflected on how her week had unfolded. Every day brought a new way to connect with her love of fantasy, whether through her stories, her art, her community, or the games that let her step into another world. Her calendar already showed promise for the weekend. A trip to the local bookstore, a writer's circle meeting, and maybe even a marathon of her favorite fantasy series. For Clara, the adventure never truly ended, it simply changed forms, waiting for her to discover it. With that thought in mind, she drifted off to sleep, her dreams alive with magic, wonder, and endless possibilities. Part 7 Friday arrived with an air of excitement. Clara had been looking forward to this day all week, not just because it was the end of the work week, but because tonight her writer's circle would meet in person for the first time. Work was busy but manageable, and Clara couldn't stop thinking about the feedback she hoped to get on her latest chapter. She'd spent days fine-tuning a particularly intense scene where her protagonist, Captain Illyria, confronted an ancient sky pirate captain for a map that could save her crew. She packed a printed copy of her chapter, tucked it into a folder with her notes, and carried it with her to work, glancing at it nervously throughout the day. When evening came, Clara arrived at the Wandering Bard, where the writer's circle was being held. The cafe had reserved a cozy corner for them, complete with candles and a stack of blank journals for inspiration. A mix of familiar faces and new ones greeted her, and Clara quickly felt at home in their company. As the group shared excerpts from their works, Clara was amazed at the range of creativity in the room: stories of futuristic space travelers, mythological retellings, and whimsical tales of talking animals. When it was her turn, she hesitated for a moment, but was met with encouraging smiles. Taking a deep breath, she began reading her chapter. The room fell silent as Clara brought the scene to life. When she finished, the group erupted into applause, followed by a lively discussion. They offered thoughtful feedback, pointing out strengths in her dialogue and suggesting ways to heighten the tension in the standoff. Clara scribbled notes furiously, her mind buzzing with ideas. Afterward, the conversation drifted to broader topics: the joys and struggles of writing, favorite authors, and the inspirations behind their stories. Clara found herself exchanging ideas and even sketching out a quick map with another member for a shared world they joked about creating someday. By the time the meeting wrapped up, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. Writing could be a solitary endeavor, but tonight reminded her that it didn't have to be. She'd found a group of people who understood her love for storytelling, and she couldn't wait to see where their shared passion would lead. At home, Clara was too energized to sleep. She opened her laptop and made some of the changes suggested during the meeting. The standoff scene now crackled with tension, and she felt proud of how it was shaping up. Before bed, she set a reminder for the next writer's circle and jotted down a few ideas for her weekend plans: visit a local art exhibit featuring fantasy landscapes, brainstorm with her new writer friend about their shared world, and of course, spend some time reading and gaming. Clara climbed into bed, her heart full and her imagination alight. As she closed her eyes, she couldn't help but marvel at how her love for fantasy continued to evolve, drawing her closer to new worlds and new friends. The weekend awaited, brimming with possibilities, and for Clara, every moment was an adventure.